If you collect Sonic the Hedgehog merchandise, you'll quickly realize there are certain characters who never seem to get any attention, most notorious being characters such as Rouge the Bat, Cream the Rabbit, Omega, and other more obscure fan-favorite characters, as they rarely get anything made of them. This is mostly due to the fact that while yes, these characters are popular with fans, most companies don't think they have mass appeal. Sure, tons of fans would buy a Rouge figure, but your average parent would rather just get their kid a Sonic or Knuckles toy, and that's why some of Sonic's more extended cast tend to get snubbed with merchandise. There's also the case of the characters no longer being relevant. If a character hasn't had a major role in a game for years, Sega won't push companies to make merchandise of them. Once a character's time in the spotlight has passed, it's rare they'll get any love at all from merchandise companies. And that's what makes Tomy's Sonic the Hedgehog Zavok and Infinite 3-pack such an exciting release. Released in September of 2018, this pack contains 3 3-inch figures, Sonic, Zavok, and the highly anticipated Infinite. Both Zavok and especially Infinite are very popular characters, so to actually have physical toys of them is so great. This pack was first announced in late 2017 in the TOMY 2018 catalog, and immediately got tons of fans excited. Fully fledged 3-inch figures of Infinite and Zavok for only $20, who could say no to that? The pack was originally scheduled to be released in July of 2018, but as standard for TOMY Sonic products, was delayed. Thankfully though, it did eventually come out. The build up to this pack's release was full of tons of hype, but how did they turn out? Is this pack worth buying for the new Zavok and Infinite figures? Let's find out. TOMY Sonic products have always had great packaging designs, and this pack is no different. If you've seen any of the more recent Figure 3 packs from TOMY, this packaging style should look familiar to you. This is the same box style they've been using since the 2016 25th anniversary figures, but that's fine because it's a great style and works really well. I still do think the pixel details on the top, bottom, and sides of the box don't exactly fit modern Sonic, though with this squarish design, it's a total missed opportunity they didn't go all out and make these into Infinite's red cubes or something. Though this dark blue coloring does make it line up with the other 3 packs TOMY has released, so it's totally fine. If we're talking about consistency though, this box did make me realize something. The TOMY Sonic Collector series is split into 2 parts, Classic and Modern. Classic products use orange as its accent color, while Modern uses a light blue color. This Chow pack, a Modern product, uses the classic orange color. This isn't really an issue at all, and the fact we even got new Chow figures at all is still absolutely amazing, but it's interesting to see this, as it's the only time to my knowledge that TOMY has gone against its own coloring rules. Though an orange background does make the Chow pop out more, light blue on light blue wouldn't work as well, so maybe that's what they were going for. With all of that said, this Infinite pack does use the correct light blue background, with a dark blue swirl in the middle. These figures look great in box. They're all posed, with Infinite for example doing a little power flex, Zavok looking intimidating, and okay, well Sonic doesn't look that great. He's in a walking pose, but I think it would have been better just to leave him static. This is supposed to be an awesome, epic pack of Sonic facing off against 2 great villains. Having him posed as if he's taken a casual stroll to his local 7-Eleven isn't a great look, but the other 2 look great here, so fair enough. Moving on to the back, it looks really cool. It features Sonic Forces renders of Infinite and Zavok. Interesting choice to not include Sonic here, but I think it looks a lot cooler. And these 2 are who you're really buying the pack for anyway. Along with that, we have character bios next to them, to give you an idea of the character for those not in the know on more pressing matters such as Zavok lore. His bio reads, Zavok is a large, powerful creature known as a Zeddy. He lives high in the sky in the Lost Hex, along with other Zeddy known as the Deadly Six. Zavok is their leader, and his impressive strength is matched by his ability to plan and scheme, making him a fearsome warrior. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. These descriptions on TOMY's boxes are always a little weirdly worded. I'm still thinking about Sonic's electric charisma. I really wonder what their source is. Did someone at TOMY write these? Did Sega supply them? In any case, Infinite reads, a mysterious new villain with remarkable power. Infinite fights alongside Dr. Eggman. His jagged mask allows only a single, piercing eye to gaze upon his opponents. Infinite's abilities are seemingly unstoppable, with one exception. That one exception, I guess, being Sonic & Co. I really like how the back of this box looks. It lines up well with their other releases, but looks really cool in its own right. I appreciate the symmetrical look of the renders and their multilingual descriptions. The rest of the box is fairly standard stuff. It's interesting that the box isn't branded with a Sonic Forces logo, as the pack was obviously based off it. I guess it's cool it's treated as a standard Sonic release though, given we already have a Forces figure pack and, well, we all know how that turned out. I think I've said all I need to say regarding the packaging. As always, it looks really good. TOMY always has fantastic packaging design with these Sonic releases. Even if they are minimalistic, they have great style and fit the figures well. But let's open this up and start looking at the figures themselves. Alright, I won't spend too much time on this guy because this is our, fourth release of this Sonic figure? I've already gone over him in my review of the comic pack with both him and Classic Sonic, but I can confirm he's still a really nice figure. I love the sculpt of this figure. He's clearly based off of the current modern Sonic design, but has his own style. It's not a direct 3D printed copy of the model, and I appreciate that. I also still really like how his limbs are curved, giving what should be a pretty static figure a more dynamic feel. If you don't have this Sonic yet, this pack is a great way to pick him up. I'm also glad to see that the quality control on this guy is still really good. It'd be so sad to see a great figure like this get ruined by quality control, but that is not the case here. But with that said, it is still the same exact Sonic figure we've gotten multiple times before. Now sure, they could have changed his expression or made him at least a little more unique, but it's fine. Infinite and Zavok are completely unique sculpts, and they're very complicated sculpts at that, so a repack of Sonic is justifiable. And to ensure kids have a Sonic figure to fight Infinite and Zavok with is a good idea too. And speaking of those, let's move on to the figures you guys are likely more interested in. You know, back in 2013 when Sonic Lost World was first announced, I remember thinking, what if Jazzwares made figures of the Deadly Six? Looking back at that now, yeah, I understand why we never got figures of Zor or the classic character Master Zik. However, with Zavok once again being a main antagonist in Sonic Forces, it was prime time for him to get a figure. With him being the leader of the Zeti, it makes sense he'd be the one to get a figure. So, how did he come out? Pretty great. In fact, while Infinite is definitely more popular than Zavok, this guy might be the better figure. First off, this is a bulky figure. They captured Zavok's girth very well. This is basically a perfect replica of his 3D model. All of his proportions are accurate, and his pose isn't too bad either. Sure, it'd be nicer to get a Zavok figure with more articulation like at his elbows and knees, but this is fine. Zavok's in an intimidating pose, one that's perfect for the character. But despite being pre-posed, you can still put him in other poses such as running poses. With that said, his sculpt does limit his movements a little bit. For example, his leg here can't go that far backwards, as his sculpt just doesn't allow for it. You can move his head, his arms, and his legs. Standard articulation for TOMY Sonic figures, but certainly good enough for what this figure was going for. I do feel he would have been greatly improved with more articulation, but I mean, you aren't losing a ton by not being able to rotate Zavok's tail. He can run, he can jump, he can land the funk on a sick nasty dunk, but he sure can't bend at the elbows. This figure is really making me appreciate Zavok's design a lot more than I did. He's got so much to him, such as the spikes on his shoulders, his spiked cuffs, and all of the teal colored bits on him that pop. It all makes up for a pretty nice design. Zavok's never been one of my favorite Sonic characters, but this figure makes me like him a lot. The paint job with TOMY's Sonic line has always been a little hit or miss, but everything on my Zavok figure at least is painted near perfectly. Sure, he has a pretty simple color scheme, but even stuff like his face looks great. They even painted in the different shades of gray for his horns. They could have left these all one color and not many people would have noticed, but it's great they fully detailed it in. Another great thing with this figure is that he's pretty well scaled to the other characters. TOMY has always taken scaling seriously with their Sonic figures, and this Zavok is no different. The stock image for this pack showed Zavok scaled down to be the same size as the others, but he's actually much bigger than them. And if he doesn't look as tall as he should be, remember that he has his legs bent and is arched forward, so he's scaled very well. It really gives the figure a much grander feel than if it was out of scale. I really don't have any negatives to say on this guy. I'm blown away by this figure. I wasn't even really looking forward to him, but Zavok is a fantastic figure. He's got a cool pose, a unique sculpt, and enough articulation for those who want to play with him. Zavok fans have been waiting since 2013 to get an action figure of him, but don't worry, the wait's been worth it. Alright, here's the figure you're all here for. 3-inch Infinite. Back in June of 2017, when Infinite was first announced for Sonic Forces, I just knew we needed to get a figure of him. His design looked so cool, he'd make for a fantastic figure. Even if you don't like Infinite as a character, he has a really interesting design, and I was so happy to see that TOMY was making a figure of him. This pack was shrouded in a lot of mystery up until its release. See, it was shown in the 2018 TOMY catalog, but after that, we didn't hear anything regarding this pack for months. For example, they were never shown off at Toy Fair, while the other upcoming figures and plushes were, and besides a few online store pre-orders, Tomy was being very tight-lipped about them. Until they were released, this stock image was all we had to go off of for the figures. Zavok here looked great, as did Infinite, but isn't it interesting he's shown from the side? Usually, Tomy's stock images show the figures from the front. Well, he's finally out, so let's take a look at him. Yeah, that's why. Don't get me wrong, this guy looks amazing from either side, but from the front he looks a little questionable. His mask is way too narrow. Compare it to this render of Infinite. His eyes are on the side of his head, and his mask doesn't shoot out as much as it should. I know the figure was designed to be looked at from this angle, but they totally could have given his head another pass and make it look great from all angles. He doesn't look bad from the front, just a little goofy. With that said, from the side he looks great. His sculpt is very unique, because unlike Zavok, this isn't quite a perfect replica of the 3D model of Infinite, and just like Tomy's Sonic figure, he's in his own unique style cause of it. His limbs are a little thicker than they should be, but that was probably done so they weren't super thin and easily snappable. While this figure doesn't look entirely accurate to the final design of Infinite we see in Forces, there's likely a good reason for that. This figure most likely started production before all of Infinite's assets were finalized, given how long it takes to produce an action figure. It's likely Tomy was going off of incomplete concept art of the character, such as this. And when you compare Infinite's head sculpt to this piece of concept art, yeah, it matches up pretty well. Tomy produced this guy while Forces was still in development, and because of that, it's surprising he came out as good as he did. Sure, he doesn't look fantastic from all angles, but Infinite's asymmetrical design lends itself to be looked at from the side more often than not anyway. Infinite's pose is pretty fitting to the character. His arms are bent so he can have that powerful stance going on, though his shoes are a little annoying. One shoe is bent so only his toes are touching the ground. And sure, it looks cool, but it makes him a little hard to stand sometimes. His articulation is also pretty limited. His neck ruffles are attached to both his body and his head, so you can't turn his head at all. His arms can move around, but given their specific bent pose, he looks kinda funny if you move them certain ways. His legs can move forwards and backwards, but just like with Zavok, this leg here is limited, this time thanks to his tail being right behind it, and his legs can't move too far forwards or backwards anyway, because of the way his body around them is sculpted. That's a shame because it limits the amount of cool poses you can put him in. The details on this guy are great though. His sculpt, especially if it was going off of the concept art, looks fantastic. Look at his hair, that's really well done. His tail looks great too, as do his gloves and shoes. Really, the only detail that I can see is missing is that he doesn't have treads on the bottom of his shoes, but that's to be expected anyway. The bottom of his shoes do have copyright info though, and the Sonic Boom animation studio Technicolor is still credited on these Tomy figures, despite this clearly not being a Sonic Boom based figure. The paint job on him looks fine, but could have been a lot better. They could have gone all out and painted his mask a metallic shine. It's just flat gray and that works, but looks kinda lame. The Phantom Ruby on his chest also is pretty disappointing, as it doesn't look much like a gemstone at all. They could have made it translucent like these Toy Island Chaos Emeralds or something, but that's probably asking for too much. I'm sure tons of you want to know, how do these figures look next to Jazzware's Sonic figures? Well, for starters, Infinite looks great next to the 3-inch Eggman, but I think his slightly off-model appearance doesn't let him fit in with Jazzware's highly accurate sculpts. I think Infinite looks a lot better with Tomy's figures than Jazzware's is. The Jazzware's figures just have perfect game-accurate sculpts, and Infinite doesn't. That's fine in the context of Tomy Sonic, but he doesn't exactly fit in with Jazzware's figures. He works fine enough, and would fit alright in the Jazzware's Sonic display, but he isn't perfect. Zavok though looks great with the Jazzware's figures, so I would totally recommend including him in a Jazzware's Sonic display. By the way, I should mention that this actually isn't the only Infinite figure being made. Sure, it's the only action figure of him right now, but the Sonic Battle Racers board game is actually going to have Infinite as one of the playable pieces. The game also has characters like Rouge, Cream and Cheese, Omega, Styx, and tons of other characters we rarely see merchandise of. Sure, they're just small miniatures for a board game, but that's still incredibly cool. Anyway, given the circumstances, this Tomy Infinite figure is great. He isn't a perfect representation of the character, but if you're a fan of Infinite and simply just want a figure of him, this guy will not disappoint. He has some alright articulation, looks pretty good on display, and really pops in a Sonic figure collection. Both Infinite and Zavok are fantastic additions to the Tomy Sonic line. It's always exciting to see new characters get merchandise, and it's even better when they're done as well as these two are. In my opinion, Zavok is a better figure than Infinite, but both of them are very good efforts. If you've been looking forward to this pack for as long as I have, don't miss your chance to get it. You will not be disappointed. I want you all to realize just how lucky we are to have this pack. Even if you aren't a huge fan of Infinite or Zavok, this is an amazing release for fans of those characters. And this was really the only chance we had to get something like this. If TOMY didn't make this pack around the time Sonic Forces was relevant, there's almost no way we'd get figures of these guys years from now. Unlike characters like Shadow, I doubt Infinite, let alone Zavok, are gonna become mainstays in the series. Maybe they'll show up in spin-offs. I mean, you might see Infinite at the Olympic Games, but toy companies wouldn't be enticed to make figures of them. Since they're still relevant right now, TOMY took the opportunity and they knocked it out of the park. This pack is totally worth buying, and I recommend you do so sooner rather than later. Who knows how long this pack will be in production, and once it's out of print, it's for sure going to shoot up in value. There's a good chance these are going to be the only action figures of Infinite and Zavok to be released, or at least for a long time and in this scale. And this pack is the only way you can get these guys. There won't be any single packs of Infinite or Zavok, unfortunately. In the future, this pack is for sure going to be highly desired by Sonic collectors. Look, I'm not saying you should invest in 3-inch Zavok, but if you want figures of either of these characters, this may be your only chance. Just look at how much releases with limited characters go for nowadays, like the Toy Island Rouge, the Jazzwares Super Pack, and Resource Gamma. This pack is looking like it'll be the TOMY equivalent to that. According to TOMY's 2018 catalog, this pack was originally scheduled to be released in July, but was delayed. For a little bit, I was worried this pack would never come out, as TOMY has been canceling quite a few products scheduled for this year, though those have mainly been part of their Sonic Boom line. Rest in peace, Lord Eggman. In any case, I am so happy this pack did end up releasing, because like I was saying, if this pack wasn't released when it was, chances are Sega would never approve stuff like an Infinite figure in the future. For example, we don't see new figures of Mephiles, do we? Even if his design is really cool, he's just not relevant anymore, and who knows if he ever will be again. Infinite likely would have been the same way. For the future fans of these characters, this pack is going to be a lifesaver. Believe me, if an important Sonic character doesn't get a figure made of it, it always feels like your set is incomplete. And well, in terms of Sonic Forces, I guess this pack doesn't fully fix that, as Chaos sure didn't get a figure. That's a shame considering he didn't get one back in the Resource days either. Though given he did have a plush made of him prior to Forces by GE, I feel eventually we will see a figure of him. Speaking of GE, some of you may be thinking, sure, it's great we got figures of Infinite and Zavok, but wouldn't it be even better if we got plushes of them too? Well, guess what? We may be in luck. In April of 2017, GE lost the rights to produce Sonic the Hedgehog plushes, thus ending a near decade-long run. They still produced their Sonic the Hedgehog novelty items though, so posters, pins, and other miscellaneous stuff was still being made. However, shortly after they lost the plush license, they started hinting and eventually outright confirmed that in Q1 2019, they will regain the license and will once again begin producing Sonic plushes. This is pretty exciting for a number of reasons. They've already confirmed that they will be re-releasing many of their older plushes, so if you missed out on some of them, it's likely you'll get another chance soon enough. But this is even more exciting considering what characters they may make in the future. GE's made plushes of nearly every single main series Sonic character, and they only have a handful left. The most requested ones being characters like Tikal, Gamma, who would be amazing, and now Infinite. Several people have messaged GE asking them if they will be making an Infinite plush, and while they haven't confirmed it, they've always replied to these posts hinting towards it. Look, you can't go replying to people asking if you're gonna make an Infinite plush with a smug Sonic X gif and then not deliver. I could be proven wrong, but I'm 99% sure GE is planning on releasing an Infinite plush sometime in the future. And that's awesome! If that happens, we'll have a great figure and plush of the character. Hopefully that ends up happening. That does bring up an interesting theory though. Could we be nearing the end of the TOMY Sonic line? It started in 2014 with Sonic Boom, and it's been going strong for 4 years. That's a long time for merchandise licenses, especially with something as broad as Master Toy Partner. GE lost the rights to make Sonic plushes in April of 2017, which just so happens to be when TOMY started producing plushes of modern Sonic, GE's main claim to fame. My theory is that Sega didn't feel the need to have two separate companies produce competing plushes, so they decided to take the license away from GE for a little bit and give it to TOMY. But GE is getting it back in early 2019. Does that mean TOMY Sonic will end in early 2019 as well? Are these 2018 products the last we'll see of TOMY Sonic? Heck, Diamond Select Toys is even going to begin producing new Sonic figures. So in 2019, both plushes and figures will be covered by companies other than TOMY. If you want this pack, or any of the other Sonic products coming out in the remainder of 2018 from TOMY, I highly recommend you buy them as soon as you can, cause who knows how long long they'll last. The TOMY Sonic line has been incredible. I mean, we now have a line where Infinite and Zavok are in the same set as small Chow figures. And what more could you want than that? But if the end is near, and TOMY Sonic is ending this year, they certainly ended on a high note.